Hey guys, it's Janie. Welcome back to the Crafting Bookworm. It is time for my May wrap-up. Okay, welcome back everyone. If you're new here, welcome. I appreciate you guys being here. It's been a while since I've done a book-related video, and it is now June, so it's time for my wrap-up for May. And again, I ended up reading 4 books in the month of May. Had a pretty good reading month, so let's get started. The first book that I read was Here One Moment, and this is by Liane Moriarty. Let me read you the synopsis. I've got my laptop over here. Aside from a delay, there will be no problems. The flight will be smooth. It will land safely. Everyone who gets on the plane will get off, but almost all of them will be forever changed. Because on this ordinary short domestic flight, something extraordinary happens. People learn how and when they're going to die. For some, their death is far in the future, age 103. And they laugh, but for 6 passengers, their predicted deaths are not far away. How do they know this? There were more interesting people on the flight. The bride and the groom, the jittery, possibly famous woman, the giant Hemsworth-esque guy who looks like an off-duty superhero, the frazzled, gorgeous flight attendant, but none would become as famous as the Death Lady. Not a single passenger or crew member will later recall noticing her board the plane. She wasn't exceptionally old or young, rude or polite. She wasn't drunk or nervous or pregnant. Her appearance and demeanor were unremarkable, but what she did on that flight was truly remarkable. A few months later, one passenger dies exactly as she predicted. Then 2 more passengers die again as she said they would. Soon, no one is thinking that this is simply entertaining story. Soon, no one is thinking this is simply an entertaining story at a cocktail party. If you were told you only had a certain amount of time left to live, would you do things differently? Would you try to dodge your destiny? And that is really the question. Like, if it's just kind of like that book, The Measure, that I read, where people got this little gift on their front porch or their back porch or however they received it, and they got a length of string. This is what this story reminds me of. What I have to say, though, is, I do love Liane Moriarty's writing, but I felt like this book took a little while to, take shape. I feel like they were on the plane for a really long time, and it just took a little bit for the story to get going. The characters were all fabulous. I loved all the characters. And the way that this lady went around on the plane and she was telling people, this is how you're going to die and when you're going to die. I did not expect how it ended, but it was so much more than I thought the story was going to be. Because with that start and it being so slow, I was just like, come on, can we get to the point of the story? And I was probably almost a third of the way through the book, I think. And then it finally started to pick up. But I just felt like it just drug on when they were on the plane. But it did all come around. It came together beautifully. The characters were amazing. And of course, I loved the plot, which is the reason why, I picked this one up. Well, one of the reasons. The other reason was I needed an H for my A-Z challenge. But yeah, it really ended up being a really good story. I really kind of enjoyed it, when it came around and it finally got to the oomph of the story. Okay. Oops. The second book that I read, again, for my A-Z challenge was Zero Repeat Forever, and this is by Gabrielle Pendergast, I think is how you say that. Now this book, I think I first read it back in 2017, maybe. I don't remember the first time I read it. It's not that easy to find a Z for this challenge, and I really want to finish this challenge. And I'm like, you know what? It's been a long time since I've read this story. Let's read it again and see if I changed my mind. I ended up reading this with my sister. I don't feel like she was all that thrilled with it. And I found out that, hold on a second, there is a second book to this. And this is the second book, Cold Falling White. And so I need to read it. When I read this book, Zero Repeat Forever, I didn't really remember much about it at all. I just remembered that I enjoyed it when I read it the first time. I did downrate it a star because the first time I read it, I rated it at 5 stars. This time I rated it 4 stars. I did still enjoy the story, and it was like reading it again for the first time. Let me just read you the synopsis of this. He has no voice or name, only a rank, 8th. He doesn't know the details of the mission, only the directives that hum in his mind. Dart the humans, leave them where they fall. His job is to protect his offside. Let her do the shooting. Now that is kind of like his mentor, his leader, who he follows and takes care of. Until a human kills her. 16-year-old Raven is at summer camp when the terrifying armored Nox invade, and this is the Nox Invasions is the name of the series. Annihilating entire cities, taking control of the earth. Isolated in the wilderness, Raven and her friends have only a fragment of instruction from the human resistance. Shelter in place, which seems the good advice at first. Stay put, await rescue. Raven doesn't like feeling helpless, and what choice does she have? Then a Nox kills her boyfriend. Thrown together in a violent, unfamiliar world, 8th and Raven should feel only hate and fear. But when Raven is injured and 8th deserts his unit, their survival depends on trusting each other. So when you take that, dart the humans, leave them where they fall, it kind of sets the story. You don't get to figure that out till way towards the end of the book. And I didn't even realize that was an important part of the Nox's mission. And yeah, I hate that it took till like almost the end before they figured that out in the story. I feel like it could have had a lot more of a hand in the story. I mean, it's important, but I don't feel like the author played on that as much as she could have. And I think the story could have been a lot more. And I'm hoping with Cold Falling White that this one is going to bring that into play more. I did not remember the ending of this book at all. And so that was kind of surprising for me too, again, after, reading it for a second time, and not really remembering a whole lot of what I read when I first read it. Like I said, I just remembered that I liked it. The characters, I really like Raven's character. There's a couple of the humans in the story that I didn't really care that much for. Um, and of course, the author makes you really like Eighth's character, even though we're supposed to not like his character. So I look forward to reading the second book. I feel like it's going to really have, well, I hope it's going to have a good, I don't know, maybe there's going to be 3 books. I don't know. Let me see, when did this one come out? And that will probably let me know if I think if the first one was 2015. I don't know. And this one was, let me find the copyright. Oh, 2019. Yeah, so I don't know if it's just going to be a duology or if she just didn't complete this trilogy series, whatever. I can't tell you that. I'll be able to tell you once I read it what the wrap up was on that. I did pretty much enjoy it as much as the first one, but yeah, I noticed things more, if that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense, but I noticed more things about it and what could have been better. Okay, enough rambling on that one. The next book I read was The Kingdom of Back, and this is by Marie Lu. She wrote the Legend trilogy that I really enjoyed. And I only had this book for a short time, The Kingdom of Back. This is the story of Mozart and his sister. Let's read the synopsis. Okay. Born with a gift for music, Nannerl Mozart, Nannerl is kind of just a short nickname, has just one wish, and that's Mozart's sister. Um, to be remembered forever. But even as she delights audiences with her masterful playing, she has little hope she'll ever become the acclaimed composer she longs to be. She's a young woman in 18th century Europe, and that means composing is forbidden for her because she's female. She will perform only until she reaches a marriageable age. Her tyrannical father has made that much clear. As her hope grows dimmer with each passing year, the talents of her beloved younger brother, Wolfgang, only seem to shine brighter. His brilliance begins to eclipse her own until one day a mysterious stranger from a magical land appears with an irresistible offer. He has the power to make her wish come true, but his help may cost her everything. Now, you hear this about this magical land. It didn't seem magical to me. That's all I'm going to say. I felt like it was a scary place. And this was a place that only her and Wolfgang Mozart could go, could see, could witness. And it did nearly cost her everything. There was so much that went wrong. It didn't feel like what went right was worth all that was going wrong in the story. Again, it took a while for this to pick up, and this was not a big book. This was a smaller book. So I think she took too long to bring in the umph of the story. Like what you're waiting for. You're waiting for this land, this magical land, and everything to be beautiful, and it wasn't. I mean, there was a lot of strain with the family members, with each one of them, and I didn't like that family dynamic at all. But, we are talking about 18th century, and, women just weren't allowed those pleasurable things, those things that they wanted for themselves. And, they wanted to marry them young and get them into good families and that type of thing. And of course, Dad was, the one all for that and was really pushing for those things. And those weren't necessarily the things that she wanted, but she was pretty much forced into whatever her father wanted, and her not being able to compose, but being able to compose, but like being really good at it. And it was unheard of for then. Women just weren't looked at as that. Nope, you are female, you're going to be getting married and have a family, and that's your life. And she just wanted different things than what her father wanted, and it really shines this light on. Now, I don't know how much of it was true. I know Mozart had a sister. I just don't know what their dynamic really was. Like, you'd have to go and check that out. Now, obviously, it's true that Mozart outshined his sister, and she wanted to have this place that she could create where she would be remembered, this magical place that they talk about. And it really did shine brightly on Mozart. And we all know how brilliantly talented Mozart was with his music. We all know. People still talk about Mozart practices music, but you don't really hear about his sister. Anna Marie, what was her? They called her Nannerl. Anna Marie, something like that, is her real name. You can look that up and find all that information out. The story, I feel, as a whole, was good. I just feel like it wasn't executed as good as it could have been. I realize it probably took a lot of research to put this together, and if you're patient with the story, you're going to enjoy it. So yeah, I ended up rating this one 3.5 stars, simply because it was such a slow start. But the characters were brilliant. The writing was fantastic. She just needed to make it a little quicker, because like I said, it wasn't a big book, and most of it was just trying to get to all the big parts of the story. So anyway, I feel like I'm rambling on all these today. Okay, and the last book that I read for the month of May was The Maidens by Alex Michaelids. I don't know how you say his last name. I'm sorry if I butchered it. This book was very, very popular. I read The Silent Patient. I really enjoyed The Silent Patient. So I figured, okay, I need... What did I just do? I was like, I need an M. So I am going to read The Maidens. So let's start by the synopsis. Everybody's already read this book, I'm sure. Everybody but me. Okay, it says, Edward Fosca is a murderer. Of this, Mariana is certain. But Fosca is untouchable. A handsome and charismatic Greek tragedy professor at Cambridge University. Fosca is adored by staff and students alike, particularly by the members of some secret society of female students known as the Maidens. Mariana Andros is a brilliant but troubled group therapist who became fixated on the Maidens when one member, a friend of Mariana's niece Zoe, is found murdered in Cambridge. Mariana, who was once herself a student at the university, quickly suspects that behind the idyllic beauty of the spires and turrets and beneath the ancient traditions lies something sinister. And she becomes convinced that, despite his alibi, Edward Fosca is guilty of the murder. But why would the professor target one of the students? And why does he keep returning to the rites of Persephone, the maiden, and her journey to the underworld. When another body is found, Mariana's obsession with proving Fosca's guilt spirals out of control, threatening to destroy her credibility as well as her closest relationships. But Mariana is determined to stop this killer, even if it costs her everything, including her own life. Okay. I was looking forward to this book because I remember when people were talking about this book, they loved it. So I really wanted to like this book, and I did to the point. But the one thing that bothered me the most was Edward Fosca was way too obvious to be the person murdering these college campus people. And that may have been our author's. That's what he maybe meant to do, was just, to make Edward so obvious that you're going to search for other people. You're going to look for the faults in these other people. And the whole time I'm reading, that's where my mind was. I just was trying to pinpoint all these different people. Who could it be? Who's not too obvious as Edward is? Who, and then I feel like that kind of makes it a little predictable too, because when you have somebody who's super obvious, just too obvious to be the killer, and it's going to be someone else, you're going to go on the other far extreme, and it makes the story predictable to me. You're going to be able to pinpoint who that was. And albeit, when you do, it's still a little bit surprising, and I feel like the characters were written really well. I feel like the plot was good, but that really bothered me with Edward Fosca. Because and I really did not like him at all. So she wrote him really well, and it was through the mind of Mariana, which is the reason why you didn't really like Edward. Just simply reading her from her perspective and her thoughts about Edward just automatically makes you dislike him. He may just be like the nicest person there could ever be, but you got this main character, and you're reading through her eyes, or you're seeing everything through her eyes. That's what really made me not like Edward Fosca. No, I did not think he was a super good guy when it was all said and done, because he wasn't. But it just that was my complaint, was that it's so focused on Edward Fosca. It pushes readers to a different direction and really makes the story super predictable. And yeah, I mean, I didn't pinpoint everything about it, but a lot of it I did. So I knew kind of in the back of my mind, it was still a little bit surprising, but not a lot, because the thought already passed in my head. If that makes sense. I don't know if I'm making any sense with that. I feel like if he didn't focus on Edward Fosca and just kind of made it, Mariana was searching for this person who could be the murderer kind of thing. But this obviously was his intent, and if it wasn't his intent, it wouldn't have been written that way. But for me, written in this way, like I said, just made it predictable. I ended up rating it 3.5 stars because, I don't know, it probably should have been less than 3.5 stars. But I normally like his writing style. I really like The Silent Patient. And yeah, I guess I expected a little bit more from it than what I got. And then, yeah, I'm rambling now. So, those were the 4 books. It was a pretty good reading month. The books were all entertaining, even the slow ones, even the slow starters. Like, the one that had the biggest turnaround for me was Here One Moment. just, it was so much more than I ever thought it could have been. Absolutely loved the wrap-up of that one. Yeah, so those were the 4 books I read. If you guys read any of these books, let me know down in the comments what your thoughts were on them. Or let me know what you did read in the month of May. And that's all I have for you guys today. I thank you for staying tuned, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.